a very, let's just say, a very catchy way of starting this video out. And of course, I'm going to come here and double down once again and tell you guys this here is the main reason why it is that you don't simp for those who, let's just say, have this propensity to want the United States to fall apart. By what I'm talking about is I'm talking about those who are on the pro-Gaza side of this entire situation. And of course, it is come back home. Now, before we get started and before I show you guys this news report, I want you to know that there's actually two things that we're going to be talking about, or two examples that we're going to be talking about to kind of assert this point. But one more thing needs to be said before we go any further. There will be a video coming out soon about violence on the left and the right as far as who is actually more violent by nature and who is less violent by nature, because, of course, we got to listen to the whole white supremacy shtick. We got to hear the whole, well, this right here was obviously a right-wing nut job who committed this crime, when obviously the evidence kind of contradicts that. And seeing how it is, we had a manifesto release kind of proving this. Of course, we're talking about the Covenant shooting. I think it's time we actually had that conversation, especially given the fact that there are certain outside people out there like Stephen Marsh, for example, who were raised and were actually born and raised in Canada, never been in the United States except maybe 3 or 4 times. It's all to go on the same person's talk show to have a conversation about who's actually the real terrorist in the world. But given what has happened here in this particular incident, I don't think it can be any more clear.
Micah, Sherry, good evening. A very disturbing story out of Thousand Oaks. Take a look here. About a dozen or so people, they've gathered here following this tragic update. This happened Sunday during an Israeli-Palestinian rally. Now, there's a group of pro-Israeli supporters who've gathered tonight. One of their own died after being struck and fell to the ground. There was some type of altercation with a counter-protester. And tonight, the Sheriff's Department, they're investigating this as a homicide. A bloody scene as we see an elderly man on the ground. That man, identified as 69-year-old Paul Kessler, would later die of his injuries. KTLA obtained video from the Shell gas station on Thousand Oaks and Westlake, where there was a Palestinian rally around 3 p.m. Sunday. Kessler, who is Jewish, was holding an Israeli flag, standing next to someone holding a Palestinian flag. There was some type of altercation, the signage obstructing the view of how things unfolded, but at one point you see the Israeli flag go down. It's unclear what exactly happened, but investigators say Kessler fell backwards and struck his head. Some witnesses say Kessler was hit with a megaphone by a counter-protester. He died early Monday morning. The cause of death, blunt force head injury, according to the medical examiner's office. It's tragic. It's sad. But demonstrations of hate have consequences. And we see these demonstrations going on throughout the country. Rabbi Moshe Frisky with Chabad of Agora Hills was saddened to hear of the passing. I was in touch with his widow today. She knows that our entire community, the entire Chabad community, the entire Jewish community is there with her. Anything that she needs, we will be there and support her in any possible way. Ventura County Sheriff's deputies are investigating the death as a homicide. Jewish leaders say regardless of where one stands on the crisis in the Middle East, there should be no room for hate.
We're alarmed, we're angry, we're terrified, and in many ways, the Jewish community is demanding that the larger community of Los Angeles stand in solidarity with us and support us as a minority.
The site now a memorial for a man who was rallying with his wife by his side. And I'm told the suspect was taken in for questioning, but so far no one has been arrested. The Ventura County Sheriff's Office, they're asking for more witnesses to come forward.
Sit here and tell me that those who are simping for the side of what's going on as far as Palestine, and but you know, I haven't really seen anybody who's Israeli or somebody who's on the pro-Jewish side absolutely flip out and go crazy and try to attack anybody on that side. I just haven't seen that yet. Makes me think that maybe it is not the right who has the people who are trying to commit all the crimes of the seditionists in the nation. It's just, I mean, it's just an observation. It's just what the hell this is. 69-year-old elderly man. Now, guys, the only time it's ever acceptable, in my honest opinion, and this is just strictly opinion, to hit somebody or make a gesture or make any attempt at anything that may even be perceived as I don't know, defensive in nature, because of course the person who actually did the little crime, which we're going to talk about here a little bit more, because some people are saying it's not a crime, but of course it's being investigated as a homicide because somebody else actually pushed the person over. I want to go ahead and say this right now. The elderly tend to be off limits. You shouldn't be getting into fist fights or anything with the elderly. If an elderly man or an elderly woman is screaming and hollering at you, just walk away. That's really and truly the best thing you can do. And the person who apparently, and of course there's also some footage out there suggesting that the Palestinian guy, or the guy who was on the side of the Palestinians, the counter-protester, he claims he was swatting off a guy who had his cell phone raised, that right there being the elderly gentleman who is on the ground. I kind of find that hard to believe, but of course we're waiting for more evidence to come out to confirm this. But still at the same time, you have a pro-Israeli protester, you have a pro-Palestinian protester. They're on the opposite sides. They're probably not going to agree on this issue, but one party obviously felt that it was a little bit too much for somebody to be a little bit too close or whatever. What you should do in this type of situation is just simply walk away. I know it can be humiliating to do so, but at the same time, when it's an elderly man, an elderly individual, which by the way is going to come up again here in a second, because we got actually 3 examples to talk about because of a nice little video that was released of a, let's just say a suburban Lib voter in Northern Virginia who went absolutely crazy when he saw a Republican voting booth. But still, I'm pretty sure you guys know where I'm going with this. Obviously, those who are on the left side of the aisle here are obviously going a little bit crazy. They're going out of control. They have completely lost their minds. Several studies have proven that mental illness is more rampant on the left. Several studies have also proven that left-wingers typically tend to be more unattractive. Also, to go on top of this, there are also other studies out there, which we will be covering in the next coming year, to prove that these people are heavily medicated. Seeing a bit of a trend here? What I'm trying to say is that the left is obviously appears at this moment in time to be a little bit more prone to violence. And also to go on top of this with this current Israel-Palestinian situation, this right here is, again, another reason why it is that you should not, under any circumstances, simp for the Palestinians or simp for Palestine. You should not simp for those who scream death to America. You should not be doing that. I don't care how you feel about Israel or not. You probably should say to yourself, hey, look, you know, I don't want to be on these people's sides. I don't want to be on the whole free Palestine side when they're going out of their way to overrun our White House, try to breach it, tear down our statues, join with the radical left, only for the radical left to then find out the hard way that people who are of the Arab nature don't exactly care for what it is that the left in this country stands for. That question, what about that question? Well, you see, guys, in the previous video that I did, there was a small clip, and this way, of course, was the video on the Nashville Shooter Manifesto, the very, very beginning of one of the clips that I showed you, which was Tim Pool, which I've decided to go back to the well on this one again, sue me. Here's the thing. He had this discussion with Stephen Marsh on his Culture War podcast. And of course, Stephen Marsh coming out there because he comes from the left-wing perspective, comes out there and automatically says that you can't go into a place of church gathering people and feel safe. You can't be safe around Christians. Crazy stuff like that there. The man is just completely wacko. He's completely cuckoo. But of course, he's one of the same people who's been predicting this civil war in the United States would occur between the right and the left. And of course, I've always asserted that anybody with half a brain could tell you that more than likely if something like that was to happen in this country, it would more than likely be between the left and the left, meaning that it would be blue on blue. So therefore, the question becomes who has the most amount of seditions? Who has the most amount of people who would actually want to harm the United States? Well, given the 2020 riots, given what's going on now, it looks to me like it's more than likely going to be the left. However, there is a very, very funny way this type of thing has been reported or is being reported. And only a media man or somebody who posts constantly every day about stuff that is, of course, media criticism or actually takes a look at the medium would actually see this. Pay attention to the next couple of minutes.
In the death of Paul Kessler, the elderly Jewish man who died today. The Ventura County Sheriff's Office says the medical examiner has ruled his death a homicide. The sheriff was first alerted to the incident when citizens called to report a battery had occurred. Likely what had happened and how it's determined. So you say he fell on his head. How can they say that was a homicide? Simple. He has damage to the front portion of his face or somewhere on his head consistent with a blunt strike, which resulted in him falling down and hitting his head. And the Ventura County medical examiners determined it was blunt force head injury and the manner of death a homicide. It's an active and ongoing investigation, and the incident appears to be isolated. So what we had heard is that he was struck with a megaphone. Now here's Chaya Rychik. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. She says NBC stealth edited this article after backlash. They initially reported it as a Jewish man just died after hitting his head. leaving out that he was actually killed by a pro-Palestinian protester. I believe this is, yes, this is the account, the creator of Libs of TikTok, of course. And here's the first story from NBC News. Man dies after hitting head during Israel and Palestinian rallies in California, officials say. Sure, they did say that, but they also said it was a homicide. Jeez. Look, they even mentioned he was in a confrontation. They changed it. Good. Jewish man killed in altercation at dueling pro-Israel, pro-Palestinian rallies. This is the Daily Mail's home index page. Pictured, flag-waving Jewish man who fell and died after altercation. Really? Really? And you wonder why it is that there are only court cases about the right? Absolutely incredible. But don't get me wrong. They are fixing these headlines because of our pressure, because people are pushing back.
As far as reporting is concerned, and don't worry, we'll get to the next part here in a second because I'm editing this clip right here in late because there's another little thing I'd forgotten about. There's a great example of what Tim is talking about is the handling of the Michael Reimel situation. Michael Reimel was an Antifa member in Portland, Oregon, and it was a night full of protests, night full of the normal activities, shenanigans that happened in Oregon. And a kid by the name of Aaron Danielson, who was a part of a group called Patriot Prayer, which, by the way, the ADL marked as a right-wing hate group when they're just a normal advocacy group that's quite frankly is. And you know, we'll talk more about this in the video I plan on doing the Stephen Marsh thing because obviously got to bring up some statistics that Tim had cited about how the ADL was classifying every single incident. Well, they called Michael Reimel, the Antifa member, an activist. He wasn't an activist. He was a cold-blooded murderer. And the cops gunned him down a few days later because he killed Aaron Daniels. And that particular killing, he actually stalked Mr. Daniels, walked up behind him, and shot him in the back. That sounds more to me like ardent extremism. Now, I find this very interesting because, first of all, the way they reported this, the way they had to keep changing the headline, the way they had to keep changing the article. Really quick, I want to say this to you guys now. Tim does have a point about we're starting to win because we're starting to push back. We're starting to get these people to kind of change things, change the narrative, say, look, this is what really and truly happened. Stop reporting all the BS because let's be honest. The media right now, for the most part, is BS. They lie to you like crazy. I've talked about this before, and don't worry, we'll do a full-blown project on this. How it is that the mainstream media loves to utilize the WWE pro wrestling playbook to manipulate people to get them pitted up against one another. Something else, too, that they do is they use selective editing, and they go out of their way to misrepresent a situation. Now, and of course, we'll talk about this more in the video discussing who has more seditionists, which I know I said left and right-wing violence, but I'm changing to seditionists. One of the things that Stephen Marsh said in his episode with Tim was that court cases is what the hell he was going off of. However, when you actually get into the nitty-gritty of situations and you actually look into it, you will actually find out that the court cases are a little bit misleading. I mean, don't you guys remember 2020, the 32 people who died, Chaz Chop, the actual literal insurrection that was going on all year? But because a bunch of flag-waving grandmothers went to the Capitol building and listened to what the President of the United States was saying at that time, mostly with people who were getting a little bit old, and of course because of a couple of really, really bad acts. By the way, we're waiting on more of the tapes to come out about said incident that we cannot mention without getting a tag put on our video. They automatically assume that people who are somewhat on the conservative side of the aisle are the ones that are violent, when it's pretty obvious by what we're seeing today that it is those who exist on the left and those who simp for people like, say, the Palestinian side that are the ones who are actually pushing the violence. Also, not forget about one particular population that's about 13% of the size of the country, at least as far as 13% of the overall population that commits right around 57% of the crime. Let's also not forget about the additional 18% that also commits a pretty heavy amount of the crime. Not saying white people don't commit crimes. Of course they do. However, when you have a smaller overall population and they commit so much crime, it makes you wonder exactly who are the people who are more likely to be seditionists. Basically, the point here is that poor white folk conservatives are not the ones who are causing all the problems. As you guys can see, if anything, they're the ones who are at risk. And one more thing needs to be said about that individual that got attacked for Remembrance Day. I'm pretty sure you guys can see that obviously this has got a lot to do with what the parents are teaching the kids. They're not exactly involved. I don't like talking about other countries that often, but of course I really and truly hate it when people from other countries talk about this country here. Last I checked, the United States, we have a deterrent against these types of people. Of course, it's not gotten to that stage yet, and I'm pretty sure you guys know what that deterrent is. It's a certain little thing, a certain little amendment that was actually written to the Constitution. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of amendments written to the Constitution that are actually supposed to protect you against this type of stuff. Don't worry, we'll do a full-blown breakdown at a later date. But then you get somebody like what I'm about to show you now.
Tried to overthrow the election. You might as well have been walking up to my head on the way to the polling station, putting a gun to my head, trying to tell me not to vote. You expect me not to take that fucking personally? You fucking try to overthrow elections with violence, and then you're out here among decent people.
Thanks for
coming out.
out.
What do you have to say that, huh? What's on your fucking what are your policy prescriptions?
Have a nice day. You've already
fucking
voted.
Rapist rights.
Yeah.
Involving yourself in people's fucking families and their fucking bedrooms.
Now, guys, there's more of this video, which we will be showing you here in a second. This guy right here, and it's funny that this guy did what he did, trying to intimidate a Republican poll worker. To me, it's actually hilarious. I also find it very weird how it was that the other guy, which you'll see in a second, just straight up walks by, and I'll talk more about that in a second. But here's the thing. This guy right here has actually been reported to be the same person that went to a Trump rally in 2018 and interrupted him during his speech when I actually had to be escorted. Yeah, a lot of resemblance here. But let me put it this way here. This particular guy right here obviously has been on MSNBC all the time. CNN, I mean, if you go on CNN, if you go on MSNBC, you practically hear anti-white, anti-American talking points constantly. It's not so much just anti-Trump or whatever. It's mostly just anti-American talking points. By the way, if Donald Trump was not the presumable Republican nominee in 2024, even if it was Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis, whoever, they would attack that person too just as hard, maybe even harder, because they're definitely much, much weaker when it comes to dealing with the media. Trump knew how to spin these people and make these people go absolutely crazy. That's why they're in the situation they are now. But they would still be very, very bad to the actual conservative candidate on the ballot going forward. Now, let's watch the rest of this, and I'll explain exactly what the hell is going on here and what you can expect from people like this.
Wow.
You fucking animal. You try to steal my vote next year, I'm gonna fucking remember you personally.
Thank you.
In fact, I'm taking a fucking picture of you. Is that all right?
Yeah, you
Permission?
can. Yeah. It's a one-party consent state.
Shitbird? Yeah, one-party state. You want a fucking one-party country is what you want.
Hey, sir, how are you? Headed in to vote?
Yeah.
Could I get a Republican sample ballot? Sure, thank you.
You know, try not to be buddy-buddy with these people because they put on the face of a good neighbor. But they support lynch mobs or the fucking KKK. Or they're fucking Bible-beating bigots and freaks. Yeah, they're not good neighbors.
I mean, the guy having a blue Prius should tell you everything you need to know about him. Definitely a lot of soy there. By the way, I don't have anything against Toyota. I've owned Toyotas. Toyotas are very, very good cars. I'm not going to tell you what I drive now. But the Prius is just something about the Prius. It's just something about the Prius. Really quick, if you drive a Honda Accord, I'm not here to insult you over your car or anything like that. It's just not how I am. At one point in time, I used to think that the Honda Accord was mostly a girl's car, and then I got stuck with it wasn't an Accord, but it was a Buick LeSabre, and then I realized that, you know, these vehicles are actually pretty good. They ride very good, but still, though, the Prius, I mean, nothing says soy like a camera thing, you know, where he pulled out the camera and said that he was, you know, going to record him, and I'm going to remember who you are. Dude, if it was me, I would be like, please, 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 please run into me again. Try it again. Now, I'm actually a very, very nice guy in real life. If any one of my subscribers are ever to meet me, yeah, I might act a little bit standoffish at first because, you know, you might be a little bit paranoid. Hey, does this guy know me, this, that, and the other, which is not the case here. But, I mean, I'm not looking to fight anybody, not looking to be a complete total jerk. You need an autograph, I'll sign it for you. I mean, just got to catch me at the right time. But this whole thing about, the camera thing, I'm like, I would just smile for the camera, give them thumbs up, clap, hell, maybe even sing a song, something like that there. Or I might do something that would absolutely piss him off even further, kind of pick on him or whatever. I mean, I probably shouldn't be in poll work, or I've worked a lot of retail, so I know how to say things to customers when they're unruly and still get away with it. By God, I've done it on several occasions. I've got a lot of funny stories I might tell you guys someday. But still, the whole thing about these aren't good neighbors, don't be chummy with them. This is the left of today. This is the brain rot, okay? This is the brain rot. This is who these people are. And the gentleman who was just simply walking in to grab a ballot, I didn't hear him say yes to a Republican ballot. He just kind of walked in. So maybe he might have agreed with what the other guy was saying, or, he just, I just want to go on my way. I don't want to deal with the political stuff. I'm just here to vote. Yada, 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 yada. Just a good old-fashioned classical lib may have been what he was, which is exactly the biggest problem. We got a lot of people on autopilot who are actually sitting there screwing around with their cell phones. I look at my cell phone a lot too. It's very, very entertaining. It helps get us through the day. But after a while, we kind of get hooked to these, and it kind of like tunes us out from the rest of the world. And you're like, I just want to be left alone. I just don't want anybody to bother me. Just leave me alone. But of course, when you got people like that, they're constantly getting into your face. After a while, you're going to get pissed off and you're going to react to it. Of course, this is another reason why it is I say that anything that happens in this country won't be between the left and the right, because as you guys could see, the poll worker there obviously knew how to handle himself. He obviously knew how to control this. You see, most conservatives, or for the most part, are nice, and we typically tend to know how to handle ourselves. It's only when we're actually attacked or anything that we typically respond with something that's negative. By the way, it could be the possibility that maybe the guy with the phone there, the guy who was raising hell at the poll worker, may have wanted this guy to do something like, say, I don't know, maybe hit him or something like that. Maybe he was doing that so that way he could play the victim. I mean, these people do this type of stuff. Their brains are gone. They've gone absolutely cuckoo. They've gone absolutely crazy. No sanity, no rationality or anything. And of course, the guy who was walking in there, what if he had actually chose to bother that guy a little bit further? I mean, what kind of tells me that that guy was kind of in agreement with him is the fact that he sat there and listened to it. He just sat there and did it. You're probably thinking he probably ain't going to do anything. But what happens when you start to upset him? It's like I said, this entire thing is just going to end up being left on left. So don't worry. We'll do a video on Stephen Marsh, and I'll expose to you guys exactly how stupid that guy is. But obviously, as you guys can see, these people are agitating a bull. They're agitating a bear. They've obviously let the enemy inside. It's gone to their brains. It's made them absolutely crazy. But they don't seem to realize that the enemy someday, the enemy that they're siding with, more than likely may devour them like a tiger or a Komodo dragon. Komodo dragons are very interesting. Komodo dragons, they have this thing where they have so much bacteria in their teeth. And you see, what a Komodo dragon likes to do is they like to actually pop up. This is getting very, very weird, but I don't care. I'm kind of on a roll right now. The Komodo dragon likes to jump up, knock a person over, and bite them. Like, it's been known to kill humans, too. Like, get them on the shoulder or the neck or the back or something like that, and then the bacteria just gets in there. And they ultimately just die. It takes like hours for them to do that. The sun kind of bakes them in Indonesia, and then the Komodo dragon comes back and simply just gobbles them right on up. Which is exactly what's probably going to happen to them someday, because eventually they're going to agitate their own, and their owner eventually just going to flip out and go crazy. Kudos to my man for showing absolute total restraint in that situation, because it's pretty obvious, given the guy's MO from the photos I've showed you, that this guy was once again just looking for attention. But still, at the same time, it's going to be chaotic in the next year. With that right there being said, guys, I'm going to go ahead and halt this video now. I just wanted you guys to kind of see what was going on. Here's the second video that's going to be coming out tomorrow to go along with the first video. Make sure you guys hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sign off in the comment section, and I'll see you guys later.